Q&A portion of the evening here. They're going to be answering some questions for you guys. If you guys want to line up one at a time at the mic, I'm going to go around. If you'll raise your hand, I'll get your name on a piece of paper, and then I'll get you cued when it's your turn to come up here and ask your question. And at the end, or towards the end, the staff is actually going to be going around and releasing different tables to go get food, starting with the VIP table up here. So just wait and let's put our hands up. VIPs first. VIPs first. Anybody here at the VIP table like to ask any questions?
So here's the deal. You have to ask us a bunch of questions, and then they bring out the food. But if you don't ask, then you just sit down and bring out food. Yeah? No, that's not how it works.
There is no limit, but we do have a hard time of dinner at 6 p.m.
6:15.
So 6:15, excuse me.
They moved it.
Is this thing on? I'll start with a big one because, I make YouTube videos and I've studied different creators and what's successful in going viral. And one of the common themes is extreme acts of willpower. Mr. Beast, who's the new #1 on YouTube, his first video was sitting and counting to 100,000 nonstop. And that's been his formula for viral videos since then. Something that's just goofy, entertaining, but clearly an extreme act of willpower, right? And when we think about what we have to offer the world as libertarians, we think of it in political terms and policy. Well, look, if you applied our idea like this, you could have this and you could have that, and it would be so much better like this. But there's something sort of deeper in the zeitgeist that people are looking for. An example of willpower, for example, is something that always captivates the attention. But in the sense that, Obama gave people hope and Trump gave people righteous anger, there's a period, a new shift in the zeitgeist coming out of COVID right now. And a lot of it's like, we're going to go to parties again, and we're going to get lots of Botox and random trends like that. But there's also something deeper, I think, that people are looking for, similar to hope or righteous anger or something coming out of this particular moment in history as we're I know this is a weird controversial phrase in and of itself, as we're coming out of COVID season, right? But obviously we're transitioning from something to something else right now. What do you guys think is the most important thing in that sense that we can offer the people of the world as a party, as a community, as people who believe in this truly spiritual message that can respond to that sort of immediate human emotional state and give people that kind of deeper satisfaction?
Right.
Well, the political disillusionment is, you can measure it so many different ways, but people are so disillusioned right now with the options they have. The Democrats and Republicans have somehow come up with a system of nominating their political candidates. It seems almost designed to pick the worst people for public office. And it's, in this last election, not many people voted for their candidate. They were voting against.
In school, this is what we can offer you, is a system in which you get to decide if your kids are taught at home or in school. And let me mention, I hate to say there's a silver lining of COVID. I think that's maybe a bit tone deaf. One thing that it has given us is, I know for 30 years, I would argue that parents should be in charge of their children, of their children's education. And so many times I would get the pushback from people saying, well, but what if parents don't send their kids to school? What if parents aren't smart enough to know their kids should go to school or whatever? And people had this idea that somehow government could better raise the kids. Somehow government cared more about the kids than the parents. And I think now we're seeing really who cares about the kids. Obviously, it's their parents, and it's not the teachers who all belong to a teachers union.
So,
Thank you.
very good. So there's a couple of things here. The first, you talk about your example of willpower. We should do some filming of people who have worked a national convention and how many hours they put in and how exhausted they are. Or we've got a gentleman running across the floor that's been working this convention, and see how punchy we get afterwards, because I think that would get a little laugh. But going back to Joe's point, Joe Bishop Henchman's point, which
Joe 1 and Joe 2.
That's Joe 2.
Pronounce it differently with an E.
We've got 3 J's, no waiting.
We're the J team.
Right. So Spike's message of "You are the power" resonated with a lot of people. I'm a little more aggressive than him, as I think people in this room are well aware. I say take your power back. A lot of people I talk to, when you get deep to the root of their frustration, it's loss of control over one aspect or another of their life. And that's what we offer. We offer them the ability to take that power back. And taking it back is an action. And that's what we're trying to inspire people to do, is to take action, as opposed to let people give them stuff. So that's my message, is take your power back. Quit letting them take it from you.
I've been involved in the libertarian movement approximately 40 years, and we keep hearing this argument, the wasted vote syndrome, or, we're splitting the vote, or this or that. What do you think of ranked choice voting as the alternative to the current system, and maybe a way to break that roadblock?
Should I go first, like do wrong, I'm very much for ranked choice voting. We absolutely need to do that, because that is a great argument against the lost vote, or the wasted vote. And also, I think that it's a more accurate way to decide what people really want. When you just give them a choice like all or nothing, I don't think it really accurately tells us what people really want. And by the way, being a scientist, being somebody who loves empirical data, I want to see data reported accurately, and I think that ranked choice is the way to go.
I'm a big favor of alternative voting methods. I'm not 100% sold on ranked choice versus other methods. But alternative methods are the way to go, because what you do end up with is, okay, I have to vote for this person so that person doesn't win. And if that's the choice you force on people, then they make the choice of, well, I like you, but you can't win, and I need to keep this other person from winning. And we need to end that dynamic somehow or another. Ranked choice voting is a good option. All the alternative methods are worth looking at.
54% is what Marshall Burt won in his district in Wyoming. He assembled together a majority to vote for the Libertarian candidate and was elected state legislator. How he was able to do that is, it's not mysterious. It is a playbook. It takes a lot of hard work. He knocked on every door in his district 6 times. He was active in his community, well known. He did mailers. He was just a very active candidate and was able to pull together that coalition. Ultimately, as long as we have a majoritarian voting system in the United States, that's how we have to get elected, to get libertarians into public office, to advance the public policy outcomes that we want to see. I think there's a lot of room for pushing alternative voting methods. The LNC has endorsed these efforts, including ranked choice voting. I think there's room to use them more in our internal practices. So, I think there's a lot of ballots that happen that end up doing multiple ballots for officers, that ranked choice voting, that's very well designed to prevent. But I don't want to, you had one today, you had a couple today. But I don't want us to think that it's a silver bullet for solving the problem. And ranked choice only really helps you if you're in first or second place, because it gives you that extra bump to push you over the line. We got to do more than just push for ranked choice voting. But I am supportive of it, the LNC is supportive of it, and I'm excited to see how the states that have adopted it, how it plays out in their elections. Ooh.
I would love to hear what all three of you are the most excited about for the next 4 years. Well, 3.5, let's say. Going into 2024, we have a ton of momentum. And as you said, people are leery of the government. They are sick of the government. Bless you. I'm not as tall as Adam. So we're coming out of this election cycle with a lot of momentum, and I think Joe's message in particular really resonated with people who thought before that libertarianism was too outside the box, and it didn't resonate with them. Coming off the heels of that, where we have more interest and we've gathered momentum, how are we going to carry that forward with the LNC, with People for Liberty, and with the state chapters that are coming together?
Okay, that's a complicated question. First of all, start speaking from states' perspective. One of the things that we've talked about in our region and haven't really gotten off the ground yet, maybe we will, is working together as states and helping each other out. I know that Region 7 is currently working on a volunteer program where they can help each other out and do, you need signature gatherers. Well, we've got people that can travel on this weekend, whatever, and building a database of that, of people that can help. The biggest thing I think we've got, honestly, and we talk about hope and how sometimes anger it drives things. We've got a lot of anger. A lot of people are sick of the two old parties and the things that they do, and we're seeing it now. Where even in the past we've had trouble where a party will excuse the actions of their candidate while calling out the actions of another candidate that are the exact same. We saw that Biden-Trump, and Hillary and Trump and all those things. But now people are starting to call Biden out for doing the same things that Trump did. Democrats are starting to call him out. They're starting to call out their own. And some of the things that I think we can do the best on that is to not stand in the way of them eating their own and quit doing it to ourselves. And lastly, I've said this many times, when people say the wasted vote thing, to go back to that for a minute, I say, well, pick a better candidate. And I'm not saying anything about the candidate on the stage right now. I think she did a wonderful job. But in some cases, we take who's willing to run, not necessarily who's the best candidate. And so reaching out and doing some candidate recruitment of people that make good candidates is an avenue that I think we need to pursue.
I have a saying that people get grumpy at me whenever I say it, but I'm still going to say it, which is libertarians tend to run for one office higher than the one they should run for. Someone like that. Instead of running for the winnable city council seat, they run for the congressional seat that they're not going to be able to win on, and so forth. And I think, at least I've seen lots of examples of that. What I'm most excited about is what our elected officials are doing. And we need to I need to do a better job of highlighting the accomplishments that they're up to. It's especially exciting for me because my day job, I talked a little bit about what my day job is earlier, is getting Democrats and Republicans to do libertarian things on tax policy. And I have to do that because aside from two, all state legislators are Democrats and Republicans. So that's what I have to work with. And I can't wait around for that to be fixed because debates are happening every year. So, I go around the states and I've testified to 36 state legislators trying to get Democrats and Republicans to do libertarian things. And it's hard. My job would be so much easier if we had libertarians at the legislative negotiating table. So that's why I ran for at-large, why I ran for chair, because I want to see that happen. It's amazing seeing what Marshall Byrd has been able to do in Wyoming in one legislative session. It's amazing to see what John Andrews is able to do in Maine. It's amazing to see what our local elected officials like Brian and his county here and all across the country are able to do. You add one libertarian to the mix, it dramatically changes the center of gravity because you have somebody who's willing to ask the questions that nobody else will ask. You have somebody who doesn't live by the sacred cows that everyone else lives by. All of the issues, and there's so many of them, where 80% of the country is with us, but the Democrats and Republicans are off the reservation, that happens. And the number of bills and priorities that Marshall and John and all of our other elected officials all over the country have been able to achieve in that environment is incredible. And I honestly get giddy, tax lawyer getting giddy, about the opportunities, like what would it look like if instead of 2 state legislators we had 20? Or instead of 300 elected officials in 37 states, we had 3,000. And keep adding zeros. It'll be a game changer, and it'll be one that'll be hard to ignore. And it's not as out of reach as some people may think it is.
Yeah, I'm excited that now it looks like people are looking for an alternative. We keep talking about how polarized our country is, and I think it is polarized. And that just means that they don't like what's going on. And we've got all these factions. We've got Black Lives Matter. We've got parents saying, please let my kids back into school. We've got people saying, how can we afford education, or how can we afford health care? When I ran for VP in '96, I talked about the horrific $5 trillion debt we had and how we have to do something about it. And people just kind of yawned. And now it's 5 times that. And people are starting to say, you know what, maybe we do need change. So I think everybody in this room is a freedom lover, liberty lover. You're here because, $5 is too small or $5 is too large for you. But the rest of the people didn't see that, and now they're finally seeing it. And by the way, I really was encouraged by our numbers. I mean, if you think about that, we beat Gary Johnson's first run. We've always been told that we need somebody who has, already held office from the other parties. But the fact that I was able to beat Gary Johnson's numbers, and I'm an unknown, just shows that people are looking for an alternative. So finally, we have a receptive audience. We have customers waiting to buy, and we got to be, we got to be here ready to sell to them.
I'd like to build on Joe's point, one thing. When he's talking about electing these state legislators and how that changes things, the other thing it does is it changes the balance of power. If you're on a city council and you've got 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans and 1 Libertarian, both sides have to court your vote. Right now, we're looking at a Senate that's 50-50 and then the vice president. If we took one of those people and turned them libertarian, you change the negotiation and you have way more power than just one person you think would have because you have changed that negotiation.
They let Marshall Byrd hold the gavel for one day because they were trying to get him to do something that he ended up not doing, so he just got the benefit without giving them what they wanted for it. But this year, 2021, is the first year that a libertarian presided over a state legislative session in history, and it won't be the last.
Hi, my name is Kelly Paulson. I haven't done a lot of public speaking. I've done a lot today, so. My main question, it might be kind of a weird, maybe inside baseball question, but I live about 35 minutes outside of Minneapolis. I saw the fire in the distance, even though we're still in Wisconsin. It's close, and it is worrying. But my real question is kind of what's the party's plan to deal with the, in my opinion anyway, inevitable right-wing authoritarianism that might come out of this as a response to all of the destruction that's been happening all over the country? Because it's something that I've seen up close. I mean, I've gone into the city. I have body armor now that I wear when I go over there because I've gone into some of the more dangerous areas where there's gunshots and stuff like that going on, and I worry about it a little bit. So, yeah, it's kind of a real issue, and I don't feel like enough people are really talking about it on like how we're going to deal with that because it's just it seems to be very reactionary to me, and I don't know what to think about it.
That's a very good question. And you joined today, right? The party today. Welcome. Welcome home. Welcome home. I think we do have a tendency to be too reactive in our messaging and in our focus. And I'm trying to move us away from that because I think there's so many opportunities for us to offer a proactive agenda and to talk to people about what they care about. So that's a lot of the direction that I at least am trying to model in my own discussion, talking about what we're up to and everything. I have a bit of a saying that the government can be counted on to do one thing, which is to oscillate from essentially tragic/comic incompetence and militaristic overreaction. There is no middle. I mean, there are pendulum swinging between those two things. And Joe was talking about how COVID has really changed a lot of people's perceptions about the government. I think one giant perception change has been that everybody, wherever you stand on all of the different aspects of COVID, I think everybody acknowledges the government did a crap job of dealing with it. Honestly, whatever you think on it. And, all the experts and all the king's men, I mean, they still produced really horrible outcomes. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for us because it wasn't that long ago, I think it was when you were running for vice president that people, more people than not still had trust in government.
Right.
That would trust that elected officials can usually be counted on to do the right thing. That, Congress, maybe they didn't have 50% approval ratings, but it was higher, it was more than the single digits that they have now. That's all gone now. There's a lot of distrust for institutions out there, and it can go in the tragic incompetence direction, or it can go in the militarized overreaction direction. We offer something different, which is to get it out of the hands of the people who want to do all that and instead return power to you. And I think a lot of people are open to that. Great question.
Yeah, I was going to say, you make an excellent point because this is exactly what happens. When there's a crisis, it just gives an opening for people to take over and to go into power over others. So absolutely. I think we need to do it. We need to start at a grassroots. We need to be talking to our neighbors and explaining to people the other way to do it because so many people only hear what they hear on TV, read what they read on the internet, and a lot of them only hear two sides. So we need to dig underneath to show how there is another way.
I spoke on this issue a couple times and got a bunch of pushback on it, and I'm going to say the same things anyway. A lot of what you're seeing goes back to what I said earlier. People are feeling a lack of control, a loss of power. They feel this overpowering government doing things to them without repercussions. And so we need to encourage them to take that power back. And one of the ways to do that is to help them realize that that's really what their complaint is. I mean, when they talk about, hey, black people are getting shot by police. Well, why are black people getting shot by police? Well, because you've given so much power to the police and you've given without repercussion. So you need to take that power back. And then here's where I got the pushback. And there's a connection there. You can reach both sides with that. Oh, you can't compare the two. Yes, you can. You have to be very careful how you do it, but you can do it because it is the same motivation. And so you encourage them to maybe not by burning down buildings, but to, hey, we have an alternative that you can reduce government power and reduce these problems.
I'd like to say I fully agree with that. I was in Minneapolis the Saturday after everything happened, and I was actually in D.C. on the 6th. As I've been trying to do some independent journalism, I wanted to know what was going on in the world. I booked a ticket, I got an Airbnb, I hopped on one of those stupid electric scooters and got over there, and yeah, I was there, and I agree. It's a very similar sentiment that I've heard from both sides, because I talk to people on both sides in both situations, and it felt very just angry and lost, and nobody seemed to know what they wanted to do, but they wanted to fight something. So
The problem is getting them to realize that they're saying the same thing when they think that they're saying different things, but yes.
it really is the same
Especially when you have demagogues out there eager to exploit that sentiment for their own ends. So, it's a bit of a Weimar Republic sense about things. And, Bernie Sanders, my husband's from Vermont, so I know all about Bernie Sanders. He's this crusty, retrograde socialist. But he hit on something, which is young people have gotten a raw deal. They were told, get good grades, get a 4-year degree, the world will be your oyster and ready for you. And, whoever promised that to them did not deliver. And they're pissed about it. And he stepped in to say, well, here's who you should be pissed at. And he steered them towards where he wanted them to be pissed at. And some of them listened, some of them didn't. He misled them about why things are the way they are and why they are. We're not that, because we actually have the actual answers and the actual solutions that will help solve this and prevent that from happening. We just have to find a way to channel that in a way that is constructive.
Well, and then Adam, talking about we've promised these kids these colleges, and you'll be successful. And then, oh, well, you're not successful, we must raise the minimum wage. But one of the other groups that we have promised these things to is the military. We've attracted all these young people to join the military because college will fix their problems and the military will pay for college.
They won't even fix your teeth.
Right? Exactly. And so we've made, so the government has made these promises and said, hey, these are going to fix your problems. But but obviously they don't. And so it is a disconnect there that we can establish a foothold in, just like Bernie did. I have also echoed Joe Bishop-Hensman's sentiments on that there are a lot of lessons to be learned from Bernie's campaign. He reached a lot of people.
It's me again. Again, back to tying things personally, right? With the comment that I had for you, that's a big thing that I have. Politicians, and each of you have really kind of touched on it on some of your speeches today, there's no trust, right? And as soon as you start talking to somebody, and I've seen this regularly, I've had it myself, right? That you're getting involved with politics and that you're moving forward and working with it intrinsically makes you a bad person or something like that, right? I think really being able to fight that is being able to tie it to personal stories and questions like that. So my question for each of you is, how has politics changed you? Either for the better, right, or the worst, right? But I have a firm belief that it's not all bad and it doesn't make you a bad person. What are some of the good things that you've seen and how have they changed you? Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't say politics changed me because I'm not a politician. If I had served on the city council, maybe I would know. In fact, when running for office, I would have reporters either ask me, so I guess you were student body president, right? Or, when did you first get interested in politics? And my answer was always the same. I'm still not interested in politics. I look at voting libertarian as an act of self-defense. I'm not here because I want to run other people's lives. And to answer the question, no, I did not run for student body president. In fact, when I went from junior high into high school, I was horrified to find out that we were going to have somebody who was in control of us, and we were going to all vote on somebody who was going to be making decisions for the rest of us. And I thought, well, how is that fair? And so I was just appalled by that. So I think I was an innate libertarian to begin with. But so I guess the question for me would be, how has running for office changed me since I'm not a politician? And I would have to think about that for a while. I guess, it's been great. I think I have a better understanding of our country, of our people, because I hear the questions that they ask. I hear the questions of the reporters. Thanks.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I also don't consider myself a politician. I'm a mechanic. And that's, I mean, though I did run for office, and that was one of the things I said is, you know, I'm a mechanic. I know how to look things up and fix things. But how politics has changed me. When we're young, it's very easy to be so sure you're right and so sure that your direction is the right way, and to not listen. You listen to respond instead of listening to listen. And when I started listening to listen, it changed so many things. And now, you know, and as a politician, you know, though I don't like to claim that title, that's what I do. When people come to me now, when they tell me what's bothering them about whatever, I listen. And I've learned so many things about how government negatively affects them. I've talked to my, dealing with my family and my sister having trouble adopting kids. And how the government, you know, you want to start your small business and how the government requires all these licenses and all these things. And it's opened me to things that I didn't know before. Like for, you know, here's an example. I always considered myself colorblind as far as race and ethnic background. When I look at you, if I say that you're a black man, it's the same as saying you have red hair. And because that was my personal belief, I had trouble recognizing the institutional racism that exists that isn't necessarily, you know, overt racism. By the way, I loved her quote. Her favorite quote of my campaign was, "It's not enough to be not racist, you must be actively anti-racist." That was my favorite quote. I've quoted it to my city council 3 or 4 times now. But seeing this, as my sister fought these adoption issues because she was trying to adopt 3 black children, and then the issues that they had to deal with in courts and things like that made me recognize these institutional racism issues. It also made me recognize that a lot of times the things that people are considering institutional racism aren't necessarily institutional racism, but they sure are institutional classism. You know, it's very, you see, we were talking about meth earlier and how how now they target the poor white communities. But if rich people were doing meth like they did coke in the 80s, you know, it would be a completely different story. So it's really made me recognize that a lot of times, and it made me make that connection that I spoke of earlier, where I can see that these 2 very disparate groups that butt heads so much actually have the same base issue. And that's how politics has changed me, is make me better able to recognize those things.
So you've both resisted the politician label. I'm a lawyer, and we have a saying in law that 99% of lawyers make the rest of us look bad. So I guess that's true of politicians too. So I studied political science at UC Berkeley as an undergrad, and theirs is a very public choice school, which if you're not familiar, that's the argument that all of that noble stuff about elected officials doing the good for society and, you know, coming together and trying to find the best solutions. Public choice school says that's all garbage, and everybody's there to you know, line their own pockets or help their friends or punish their enemies, and politics is this, you know, throwing all these people in the arena and the back and forth and all of that. So I actually entered, to the extent I've entered politics, which maybe I haven't, but to the extent I have, it's been with that cynical framework and background.
Yeah, no, you hold office.
Yeah.
You call yourself a politician.
And I've been surprised to learn that it's not always true. I wouldn't have been able to do what I do in advancing good tax policy if that was completely true. I have found so many good public servants and good bureaucrats are hidden there, but who are willing to do the right thing, you know, when confronted with the choice of do the right thing or not. and every incentive says that they're going to choose to not do the right thing, that they do the right thing. There's not enough of them, which is why I'm in this party and not in any other political party, because I mean that's you know, from my vantage point as chair, something that's very inspiring to me is whenever a libertarian, wherever they are in the country, runs into trouble with the law, trouble with finances, they hit a rough time in their life, whatever it is, libertarians from all over the country come together to help them out. And you know, maybe you've done that, maybe you've been the recipient of that, but it's second nature to us. We don't even, it's almost like we don't even need to think about it. Oh, somebody needs help making their rent. How can I help with that? Or you know, whatever the situation may be. That's who we are as politics. And you know, we've got our underlying principles and our underlying framework of how we view the role of government, and I think that helps shape that. And so my answer, strangely, is like I came into this very cynical and have actually been a bit uplifted by politics, which should normally earn boos from an audience like this. But that's my answer. Yeah.
I'd like to expand on mine for one thing, because it's something that's dear to my heart lately. One of the things we see tearing us apart as libertarians is these internal caucus wars and these internal infighting. And so a lot of people swear off caucuses. I did the exact opposite thing. I listened to all of them, and I joined all of them. I'm a member of the Pragmatic Caucus, I'm a member of the Radical Caucus, I'm a member of the Mises Caucus. I pay dues to all of them. Because when you sit down and talk to them and listen to them, they all want the same thing. Sure, every group has a few assholes. They do. If you look at the numbers percentage-wise, they're actually pretty similar. The smaller caucuses have fewer assholes because there's fewer of them. But the vast majority of the people in those caucuses are not like that. We get that loud, squeaky wheel that pisses everybody off, and then we, the party of individualists, collectivize that caucus. And we've got to stop doing that. The Mises Caucus has great things to offer. The Prag Caucus has great things to offer. The Radical Caucus has great things to offer. Even the Audacious Caucus, who I have been very outspoken about in certain ways, has great people in it and great things to offer. The Waffle House Caucus is a great example of how people can, from all those different groups, can come together. Listen to each other. Don't just listen to when we're out doing outreach, listen to them, but listen to each other. Because we have far more in common than we have divergence.
These are all very serious questions.
Yeah.
If I start an asshole caucus, will you join that too?
Let me answer that with, yes, I absolutely would, if you will join my caucus, which I started a couple weeks ago, which is the You Can Fuck Right Off caucus.
There is a Facebook group dedicated to battling the problem in the party that they see, which is there is an overabundance of J names in party leadership. And this panel is not very, I mean, they're going to get upset when they hear about this panel. So.
The J team.
Anybody else?
It seems that we focus on the 4-year cycle and 4-year worship. We want to run for the presidency. I haven't heard a lot about how do we how do we manipulate to miss
Manipulate, so what?
Midterms.
midterm elections?
Oh.
Work well for us. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
It's my turn to go first? Okay. First of all, I think the midterms are more important. The midterms are where a lot of the local races are run. Well, I'm from Illinois, where it's even different than that because the local races aren't during the general election. The local elections are in the spring. And so we ought to be focusing more on the midterms rather than less. The presidential ticket, sure, it's very important, and Joe did great work on it, and we can't quit that. But focusing on these midterm elections is where we can really, that's when, if you follow political history, a lot of times that's when changes in the House happen. People are ready for a change in those midterms. They've had 2 years of that old other party, and they want to make a change, and they're swinging back and forth. Well, let's give them a third option in that midterm. That's and then I'll do you one better. We focus on that 4-year cycle, and I've said for both my terms, that's too short-sighted. I'm not looking for next presidential election. I am, but I'm looking at the presidential election after that, and the presidential election after that, and the Senate election after that. Long term, that's where our gains are gonna, we can have our pipe dream of the presidential election next term. Sure, we can have that and we can try. But long-term gains, building up our bench, focusing on these midterm elections, focusing on local elections, getting people so that they don't have to answer that question. Well, how are you going to do this if you've never held office before? Let's get them elected in the midterms and the local elections so that they don't have to answer that question ever again. That's my answer.
So the presidential race is very important because a lot of people come in through the presidential campaign, through the media exposure that we get from it. Joe, I know you know this, but I'm going to pretend like you don't know this. Our national party membership grew by 1/3 during 2020, and with few exceptions, with negligible numbers of exceptions, is people inspired by the message that you and Spike offered and reach them. I mean, it's a flashpoint. And I always ask libertarians, how did you come to the party? And everybody has a flashpoint story of how they came in. And the answer from so many people is Gary Johnson and now you, the answer that comes from. But now that I've praised you, I'm going to bury you.
Here's the other shoe.
The local elections are very important, and your current LNC has recognized that because we've shifted strategy and resources to focus on winnable races and not dumping money into them, because $500 doesn't make a big difference. We could divvy up the national budget, the national LP budget, and that doesn't do the trick. But it's developing the infrastructure to be able to do this. So, earlier today I mentioned regional trainings. It's a big initiative to develop the talent pool of the field operatives and the campaign managers and the staff that we need to run winning elections. And honestly, that was the biggest request that we got from candidates, that I got from candidates last year. Wasn't so much money. We could get the money if you were doing pretty well. It was, I need talent to run a winnable campaign. And so the talent that we did have had to cover like multiple races, and there was burnout issues, and you don't do you don't do as good job when you're running 7 campaigns from when you're running one campaign. So we need more talent. I hope everybody in this room will help. If you can go to your regional training, if you can get the certifications, to develop those skills so that you can pitch in when we do get time to, or when we're faced with that opportunity. Because we have lightning strike opportunities. Tom Cotton finds himself in a two-way race against the Libertarian. That was a lightning strike opportunity. We didn't have the talent to throw in. Money wasn't the issue. Actually, Democrats were pouring money. I raised a lot of money from Democrats for that race, but we didn't have the talent to throw in against that. So we're trying to change that. This LNC, 2 or 3 terms ago, so before any present LNC member in the room was on the LNC spent 1% of its budget on campaign infrastructure and getting people elected. Something that I maybe controversially think is the #1 purpose of the Libertarian Party, but 1% of its budget. This LNC took it from 1 to 10, a 10-fold increase while keeping the balanced budget. I'd hope we can go higher, working hard to fundraise to go higher, but that's what I hope is a demonstration of what we're trying to do, and that it's not just about the presidential election, that we're trying to build up this infrastructure. And we've got about 30 different initiatives underway right now to build up the party's infrastructure to elect and re-elect libertarians, which maybe is bad politics for me. You know, if I was being a good politician, I would do one thing and achieve the one thing and then talk nonstop about how I did the one thing. You'd all love me. Instead, I'm trying to do 30 things. I'm not spending enough time talking about all the accomplishments and everything. But I mean, that's where we're at. You know, we're playing catch up. We're behind on data. Libertarian Party should be ahead of the Democrats and Republicans on data. We're behind. We're behind on empowering our activists and our grassroots with the tools you need to change policy. I want to catch up on that. We're behind on messaging. We're behind on everything. And we're trying to close those gaps as quickly as possible, as all of you are at the state and county level. And I thank you for everybody's hard work on that. And if anybody has done all the time they need for the county party and the state party and has some free time to help out with national stuff, please see me, because we need all help we can get.
Or me.
Yeah.
Not me.
Joe, because People for Liberty is serving as a pipeline for that and collecting data with our data company.
You get the last word.
Yes, I got that. Yeah, so great question. And since they answered with very good answers, if you don't mind, I want to take it a step further, because we've gone from 4 years to 2 years. And I'm going to take it from 2 years to daily. What we need to do is we need to be winning over people daily. If we see somebody who we can bring to the movement, we have to make the movement bigger. And we have to show that we can do things without government. And by the way, let me mention again our National Libertarian Day of Service, which it was somewhat of a coincidence that it was on May 1st, but as you probably know, that's considered to be the Socialist Communist birthday. So I say one day of the year is too many for big government. So how about let's take that day back and have it for freedom, and we just need to grow the movement, not just in election cycles, but every day of our lives, and live like it, and just grow the movement and bring more people in. So thank you.
Joe, Bishop Henchman mentioned the training. For those of you who aren't aware, our region, Region 6, hosted the first one, and it was very successful, and it served as the template for the rest of them. And we have one coming up again. I don't remember the dates, but all of you now, I think, have my cell phone number.
September 18th and 19th.
September 18th and 19th, Des Moines. It is well worth the trip if you can get to Des Moines. And you can see Myra.
What does it cost to participate in this training?
I believe that it costs $0, Joe.
That's a good price.
That is a good price. You will have to pay for your travel and room, but the training itself is free, and it is fantastic. So if you can make that, and then as Joe said, reach out every day, try and reach a person a day. It's like an apple a day. A person a day keeps the government away. I'm going to brag on Joe Jorgensen here for a minute, and Spike Cohen, who did an outstanding job in their campaigns, every stop reaching new people and bringing them into the party. I went to several stops on their campaign, and every stop, they just showed an outstanding grasp of the ability to just talk to people, and new members signing up at these events and then signing up on the website. A person a day, if we've got, 80 people in this room, and everybody gets a person a day, that's going to add up pretty quick.
That's going to be it for the Q&A. Thank you for the wonderful panel and for all the amazing questions you guys had. It's really awesome to have this kind of open discussion where we all can sit down and talk liberty. So thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Always a pleasure.
All right, guys. Back in February of 2020, we lost a very important member or fighter for liberty here in Wisconsin. Professor Joseph Daniels was struck by a vehicle and passed due to his injuries. We first met him, he opened for Gary Johnson at the largest libertarian rally in Wisconsin history at Serb Hall. And then he came to our state convention the following year, put on a wonderful presentation. And I know that he also worked with some of our good, like Phil Anderson and his governor's race, providing economic support. So I would like to just take a moment of silence to remember Professor Joe Daniels and the work that he's done. All right, thank you.
All right, we are going to be eating here soon. The hotel staff will dismiss the tables, starting with the VIP table. And so just grab a cocktail and we're going to have some food and then we'll move on to the awards and the panel.